Hi everyone, just for the recording. I hope you're well. Great to have everybody here, and we know that some people aren't going to be here today because of other conferences going on. But we're going to crack on with session two with Stephen, who's going to just sort of have a quick recap of what was going on in the Teams channel, because there was quite a good little chat, mainly this morning actually. Apologies for the slow start for the Teams group getting going, but hopefully everyone's now got access. If you haven't, let Sophie know she's on it. So yeah, Stephen, would you want to have a quick review of that?
Yeah, so welcome everyone. I think, I think as Rachel said, it has been a bit of a slow start, but things seem to be popping off now, which is good. And I think that sort of, I think the aim of that chat is to really sort of shape the discussions of when we meet. So by all means, that content for each session is there as a backup, but it's very flexible and movable. Yeah, so I think sort of, in terms of the things that are being discussed, obviously it was Rachel sort of thinking about flavor and thinking about sort of maybe a more audience-led retrospective way in which you could achieve a similar sort of outcome by looking at your reviews, sort of word clouding keywords to see what themes are coming up, and then sort of devising content and content pillars, themes around that. And obviously that has an advantage because you're being led by the people that are sort of engaging with you in real life. So, it helps in terms of that sort of duplication or replication from the in real world experience to the digital experience. Of course, counter to that, depending on your sort of audience profile and work, it may be that actually the people that follow you online are completely different to the people that come and visit you, and therefore that approach may not be as suitable. But I think what really stands out is that actually all of these are approaches, and there's no sort of right or wrong ways to do it, but there clearly is a need to have a adopt a strategy or adopt a methodology that sort of is logical and makes sense, and is informed, obviously combines that creative element with that data sort of audience-led approach. Then sort of I popped up with sort of a quick question about the people who they draw inspiration from in the accounts, as a sort of quick starter for 10. Somebody referenced Greg's as being a very active account, and I think that's true. They are. Other channels could be Specsavers, Ryanair, obviously, but actually I think there is beauty in sort of acknowledging some of the effective reactive posts that these accounts are doing, and how they are aligning their sort of reactions to real life world happenings, or with their sort of brand agenda and values. And I think actually that sort of within the charity sector, RNIB are probably leading the way for that in terms of how they trend hack by reminding people of the importance of alt text, and sort of those things very clearly resonates with their agenda as an organization, and it really hammers home the point about what they're all about and trying to achieve. And then lastly, I sort of seemingly opened a can of worms by sort of asking, what are the barriers that you sort of feel to creating digital content at your respective organizations? And that could be, organizational barriers at a very top level, but it could also be sort of, just problems that you face on a daily basis. Yeah, so one of the sort of responses was that actually the problem of maneuvering, or not maneuvering, but the problem of internal stakeholder management, and that building that trust and relationship with those that present and you sort of communicate science, versus sort of the digital practitioners who capture and publish, and potentially some unease, growing unease, reticence of wanting to be on camera and constantly doing that because it's either outside of the day job or it's not something that they're feeling comfortable with. And then there was a response to that saying that scripting has obviously could be one way to help negotiate and alleviate some of those fears. But yeah, no. So that seems to be the one of the real bones of contention and pain points. So I think I would like to spend a sort of couple of minutes going around the room, just reflecting on some of your own issues that you may have not yet added to the discussion, or that have come to you over the last week, or indeed if you think that you have an approach and response to some of the issues that were raised in the chat, then now is your sort of time to shine, so to speak. So
Stephen, just to say, if anyone isn't on the Teams channel and didn't see the chat, I think I'll just put the thread of
Yeah.
chat into the text while you're opening up the conversation.
Yeah, that's great. So yeah, so I just wondered whether I'll throw it open to the floor, because I'm conscious that my voice can get very tiring. Plus, also, this is a shared endeavor, collaborative endeavor. I'm not the font of all knowledge that has all answers, and actually some of your experiences may be more valuable. I see one hand up. Sorry, I can't see your name. Becky.
Hey, can you? Yeah. So I would say I'm going to share our win, but our barrier first is that we are so busy, it's hard to prioritize what can feel like quite fun. Because we don't mind being on camera, right? We're all presenters, we're all like, it's fine. So our win is we set aside a morning at our staff retreat just before this course. And it's less that bit, like we made 7 videos, we all did the same question to camera, and we did a fun trend. And it was less that, obviously that's a win to have 7 captured. Our intern then processed them for it. Thanks, Tess, who's on this call. But the win for me is that when I scheduled it, it didn't feel half as painful because I had the video, I had the hashtags. Again, Tess helped me with that. But yeah, and I've got 6 more weeks, right? So it just felt joyful. So that's my share, because I hate batching. I think I'm just so like creative. The thought of holding on to content and not putting it straight out kills me. But then the ease when I was able to schedule it every Thursday for the next 6 weeks was just like, I've got a video every week for the next 6 weeks. That's cool. So yeah, that's our win, and I'm pleased with it.
No, I think that's a really important learning, and something that I am still trying to battle with, even in this day. When I first started, I was very much frenetic in my approach to social, just thinking, the more you post, the more chances you are of hitting those highs. It's great, but it's a tiring way to live your life. It gives you grey hairs very quickly, very rapidly, and that constant burden and pressure of thinking that you need to create on the spot immediately, is weary and tiresome. And yeah, there is actually some liberation in being a bit more organized, and that batching approach, being able to schedule that stuff, because you realize that actually it enables you to free up time in other parts of the week to either create more content or do other aspects of your job, which maybe are more pressing than the fun bits. Joanne, from Science Oxford.
Yeah, hi. Our barrier is getting the team involved in doing posts and stuff. I just wondered whether anyone had come across any really good training for teams to produce content and videos to encourage them and give them confidence for posting.
Interesting. I mean, off the top of my head, I can't think of specific training in relation to that. Which
there's
oh,
yeah, sorry, yeah, there's a newsletter I follow called the Big Yellow Newsletter. Helen can't remember her surname. I'll share the link in the chat, but she does, yeah, you've got that. She does some great training. But Stephen's also talking about potentially running a little extra course, which might cover this. So we haven't discussed it yet in detail, but that can come later down the line, maybe.
Yeah, I think, you know, from my perspective, and I think this is something that we probably all relate to, is that actually, you know, the way that the world has evolved, digital content creation is sort of a shared endeavor for most people at an organization, especially for organizations of our scale and our sort of resource level. And that comes with its own issues in the sense that not everyone is happy or feeling comfortable with, you know, being on social media. You know, GDPR, obviously, you know, your digital footprint and all of that, which are, you know, important issues that we need to counter. But then also, you know, some people just aren't interested or in doing that because it's not part of their job, which is totally respectful. But actually, it doesn't take too many people to be of that sort of persuasion and mindset before actually it becomes quite sort of paralyzing, I guess, in the sense that you know, when you're only relying on 4 people and those 4 same people, then, you know, there's lack of distribution of labor, it's more time resourceful, and those sort of wearisome implications sort of take more of a hold.
Would it be an option to use voice, as you know, instead of having to have the face?
Well, yeah.
Ellie, I think Ellie's got a question as well.
Yeah, Ellie.
Yeah, I was just going to add that for us at Kielder, we sort of experience this as well. We find that the people on staff who are willing to be on social media, who are willing to help out with this stuff, it is our younger female staff, and it then feels very resource intensive on them. So it's basically 3 of us out of the team who do it, and everything falls on us to do it. And it's really hard to get other people involved. And we ask and we ask and we ask, and we say it doesn't have to be much, it doesn't have to be hard, but I don't know how to motivate them. I don't know how to get across that it's not intimidating.
Yeah. Rosie at Winchester?
Yeah, I was just going to sort of say something that we've developed or we're currently developing. We've had the same issue with presenters not wanting to be on camera or not wanting to do scripted stuff. And so when we get new presenters in, what we want to do now is give them a photo permission form as soon as they come in and explain like what our job is in marketing and how it is actually part of their role, because there is that thing of, oh, it's not my job, but actually if you're signing up to be a presenter, we're now saying being on camera, if you're happy to be on camera, is part of your role, and you will be pulled out from time to time to do it. But I think I think a few people will have this as well. We're quite lucky that there's like live demonstrations going on or live shows, so technically people aren't performing to camera, it's just us being there and then taking the footage. And if we've got their permission, their written permission beforehand, they're fine with us doing that. But I can agree that getting scripted content, or if you want to jump on a trend or something, that it doesn't quite work for those sort of videos. But I know we'll keep you up to date if it works, if us integrating ourselves from like recruitment from the beginning actually has an effect on their willingness to perform to camera. Yeah.
Sophie?
Yeah, I just wanted to give a bit of a perspective because I separate from my ASDC work, make online content. I think something that maybe potentially makes people a bit I think we forget that the internet is this massive scary place, and so I think I think it's worth recognizing that to your presenters as well, and just being like, we know that you might like the comment section, right? It's terrifying, and so I think just taking that time to recognize it. And yeah, interesting at the recruitment stage, being like, this will be a part. How do you feel about that? And then like was being said before, like maybe easing people into it. Like, okay, well, how do you feel about having a video that just has your voice? Okay, then you see that the comments aren't all, oh, what's that horrible voice? You know, it's just about, it's such a scary space. And so just recognizing that rather than being like please make content for us, we need it, might just help them feel a bit safer and a bit more seen. And even if it's like, oh, you know, we're going to have someone moderating the comments and deleting any comments. So I think just being aware of that aspect of it as well, that it's scary posting yourself on the internet. Yeah, I just wanted to make that point.
Dundee Science Centre.
Yeah, I was just going to go back to Rosie's point, because one of the things we do when we have new staff members as part of their induction is we have them kind of fill out a really short form where you sort of say, not only are you happy to be in photos, are you happy to be in videos, are you happy to be recorded for promoting the Science Centre, but also asking them about their own hobbies outside of like their job. So for example, if they're into crochet or skateboarding, or like if they like astronomy or something like that, then we have kind of a specific database of who would be best to go to for videos and who would have the most interest or kind of passion behind it. And that's really helped to kind of direct kind of interest and kind of be like, we're not just going to you because you're the only person that, well, the first person we kind of like saw on the day, but actually we know that you are really passionate about this, and then that passion comes through on the videos or the content. Also, another thing I was going to say in terms of kind of getting team buy-in, I guess for us, it's just you kind of have to go for it sometimes, and you may fail. But when there's those sort of big wins, that really helps to, like, people will actively come up and be like, I want to be part of the videos because I've seen how well they're doing. And we're quite fortunate. We have a team that's quite kind of, but a lot of our team are quite younger and they are kind of already in that sort of space. So they are kind of very knowledgeable about what works and what works well and what doesn't, and will give their own sort of feedback and ideas for things. So I guess that's kind of us being fortunate, but at the same time, sometimes you kind of have to take that risk and just go for it.
The database is a great idea. I think that's brilliant, because then you've kind of got a bit of a comfort zone around it already, and like you say, the knowledge base. Yeah, and tying it in with recruitment, definitely.
Funnily enough, we actually have a similar database idea at ERI, which sort of, again, makes things more collegial. And then equally, I think, you know, sort of, you know, when I have started TikTok channels at the organizations that I've worked at, it's always been a softly, gently approach, you know, working with potentially one individual to begin with, you know, sort of getting to know them, seeing where their limits are. So, you know, I think one of the first contributors I worked with, we just had a script and then we created a voiceover piece of content, so it wasn't on camera, and then that was released, and then that sort of didn't send shockwaves around the team, but you know, people's ears pricked up, and then, you know, one of their colleagues was then like, actually, I think I could do something on camera, you know, then that turned into be a viral hit sensation. And then before long, everyone was sort of coming up to me say, actually, I don't want to write a Twitter thread, I want to make a TikTok instead. Derek, I noticed that you've been quite active in the chat and you've raised some sort of interesting ideas there. I just wondered if you want to come in, or.
Sure. I hope you can hear me okay. It's a little bit noisy in the background,
Yeah.
at least for me. Yeah, I'm just really echoing what my colleague Stephen's been saying in the Teams chat. I don't know, I've been in this role for about 10 years plus now. And back in the day, it feels like more people were comfortable or open to the idea of being in front of camera. Now it feels like it's taking a lot more persuasion to get them to do it. And by the time they're sort of up and running, they've moved on, or they've changed the role in the company and aren't really in the same position to be able to support the content generation that would require. And then I think there seems to be a sort of different environment when it comes to making content that would be used for educational resources that we develop. And I suppose that maybe it feels like it's a safer space, or there's less risk of the content that person's contributed to being commented on by, you know, an audience that could be anywhere. in the world, or that we wouldn't necessarily have any sort of comeback to, or be able to protect the staff in the way that we would want to, should there be any sort of negative commentary around what's produced. And you know, our approach is similar to what others have suggested here. We, as part of our induction program, we try to highlight or illustrate to people the need for us to have a presence on social and online, and that if they consent to filming or photography or to doing radio voiceovers or whatever it might be, that is of real benefit to us, but it also helps to develop their skills as a science communicator.
Yeah, and build that community feel.
Exactly. So there's a kind of win-win situation for both the individual and for the organization. But as I say, just generally it feels like it's getting harder to do that, and I think it's maybe just a greater awareness perhaps amongst staff coming through that they're less comfortable sharing themselves online on behalf of the company. Maybe
it's a big ask, isn't it?
It is a big ask, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, but it needs to be shared, and like we've said, I mean it's great to have this conversation, and I think let's carry it on the Teams chat as well, because it's obviously something that we can all feed into and share the load. But I'm just conscious of time. Sorry to cut you short. I think we should get going with the little presentation, Stephen, if that's all right with you.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Let me just share screen.
Yeah, if you could. I will go through some of these slides at breakneck speed for two reasons. One, time, but also second reason, you're all clever people, and some of these things probably don't need to be explained in as much detail and depth. But you know, like last week, you know, this isn't you know, the gospel. These are just introductory ideas for you to go away and think about. Right, so the reality, a bit of overview, going back to last week. Social media is a crowded space. You know, standing out from that crowded space requires a combination of strategy, consistency, and creativity. And then content creation, as we've just literally said, it can feel overwhelming, both on an individual level, but then also on a team level. But breaking it down into sort of, you know, different types, planning, and even thinking about ways in which you could repurpose content, sort of can enable to make the process of content creation more manageable and potentially even more effective. So next slide. So won't linger on this too much, but different types of content. You know, there's text-based content that you might see more commonly published to the likes of Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook. You've got visuals. Visuals pretty much feature on all platforms, to be honest. You know, meme generation, videos. Obviously, videos are everywhere, pretty much on all platforms. Interactive content, probably more of a TikTok, Instagram stories type, you know, piece of content. Idea of generating two-way communication with your audience and sort of engagement, you know, polls and quizzes. Live streams, I've added this. These are options. I don't think there are many sort of institutions that are doing this. It's obviously comes with its own pitfalls and sort of barriers around resource. But, you know, this is another way in which you could potentially feature behind the scenes content. Great for question and answers with people. Real-time engagement, you know, it drives immediate interaction and potentially maybe doesn't take as much planning as sort of creating a video, but in it, as I said, it is a different kettle of fish to other content types. So, you know, what does the algorithm look for in good content? Well, there's basically lots of things it's looking for. User engagements, like, shares, comments, they all indicate that users found it interesting. Relevance, you know, are there keywords or hashtags being used? timing and frequency, so posting consistency and at the right time. Boost your visibility, recency, so obviously newer posts get prioritized over your older posts. User interactions, you know, accounts followed, interacting, click-through rates and all these. And then other signals are, next slide, you know, your profile authority, how large your follower count is, how consistently you post, your engagement and impact on organic reach. The content types have an effect on, you know, performance. So videos, images tend to perform more better than text. Virality, again, if you're somebody that's done something really witty in a timely fashion and it's just gone boom, you know, that signals another form of relevance and the algorithm will give it more sort of boost. And then obviously watch time for videos. It's another signal for platforms to say this is good. Let's sort of distribute it to more people. Next slide, please. But ultimately, visual content basically seems to reign supreme. Around 65% of people are visual learners, and therefore it's sort of understandable that visual content is more appealing. And this little sort of graphic from Sprout Social, I think really underlines the way in which different content is engaged with. So obviously at the moment, it's all about short form video, but then you have images after that, GIFs and memes, and it's not until you get down quite low that your text-based posts. And then I think the interesting thing here is that actually this idea of URLs and links to other sort of areas of content, most platforms tend to downrank that. They don't want people to go off their platform. So, you know, just think about that when you're posting to other places. You know, that post may not be performing as well because of the presence of the URL. So next slide. But all of the above basically means nothing if actually you're not thinking about your audience. So you can create some of the best content, you can put it in, you can publish it on the wrong platform in which you don't really have an audience or following, and it will basically slump regardless of whether you've created a banging video or, you know, done a really funny meme. Next slide. So, you know, this is where sort of the importance of content calendars really comes to the fore. You know, a content calendar is at its simplest level. It's just something to help you plan out and organize your upcoming posts for weeks or even months, quarters, years, whatever. You know, it helps ensure that you have a steady flow of content without gaps or indeed without you just basically spamming the internet in a really annoying fashion. You know, as referenced earlier, by planning ahead, you can balance different types of content. You can create educational, promotional, entertaining content and be proactive rather than reactive. And obviously a well-organized content calendar helps you manage your time more effectively and keeps track of content during busy periods. So holiday seasons being a prime example, or maybe when you're running a large campaign and you've got to balance your BAU activity with campaign activity. That's really where sort of content calendars come to the fore. They are a visual way of, you know, you being able to show what content's being published, where it's being published, and who it's being published for. Next slide. So there are a range of content calendar tools out there. We can start at the very basic level, an Excel spreadsheet, a Google Sheet. You know, you can basically manually track content, especially if you have a small team or budget. And in fact, it technically doesn't even need to be Excel. It could be done on Word. But the idea is a document that you can collaborate on a team or can be viewed by a team in which you're separating channels and you're sort of putting them into days. And then underneath those days, you're basically going to say what content is being published on what day. And then you might also look to, you know, visualize or reference, you know, your type of content or your pillar. So then more sort of advanced tools, I guess, would be sort of the Trellos and Asanas, Monday.com of the world, that basically allow you to track the status of each content piece. So you can take it from ideation right the way through to publication. It has the ability for you to assign tasks to others. It allows you to effectively manage the workflow and creation. And then it can also be mapped to a calendar as well. So improved functionality designed for, you know, collaborative work practice. And then at the very sort of top end, you have, you know, specialist social media management tools, you know, Hootsuite, Buffer, Sprout Social. You know, there are others out there, but these are, you know, specialist platforms that will cost you money. I think there is a free version of Hootsuite and probably Buffer and Sprout, but these are very limited. And, you know, they take it a step further in that they allow you to sort of automate scheduling. They provide you with your analytics. They, you know, provide you with AI plugins to help you write posts, suggest when the best time for you to post based on your following and when they are most active. And obviously it has easy integration with your social platforms, so you don't manage your posts on platform, you manage it through this central system, and it sort of collates it all into one, as I said. So yeah, so this is effectively, we use at the RI Sprout Social. And this is what a standard sort of week or 2 weeks in August look like. This is the sort of stacked view in the sense that it's basically just tracking all of the channels and it's telling you how many posts have gone out across each channel. So, you know, 1 Facebook post each day, a couple of Instagram, a couple of X, 1 on LinkedIn, then, you know, fairly similar the next week, 3 on TikTok. And then next slide. This is exactly the same week, but it's just in a different view. So this then is enabling you to see actually what that content was. So, you know, new videos, links to events, you know, video, Are You Smarter Than X? And you can see that there are certain, you know, pieces of content that are being repurposed, that are being published on one day on one platform and another day on the next platform. So yeah, you know, we're looking to be efficient, but it's a way in which we can keep track of what's going out, basically. However, even for the RI, we still do start with an Excel spreadsheet, and then, you know, it's not the most efficient thing in the world, but then we transpose that Excel plan into Sprout. The great thing about the Excel spreadsheet is that obviously we can put it on SharePoint and then people can view it. They don't need to have a license with Sprout. So that's another sort of workaround that isn't the most effective way, but enables others to see what's going out when. Next slide. So, you know, scheduling, frequency and tips, all of these are tips. And to be honest, algorithms and platforms change so quickly that this is, as soon as I say it, it's effectively out of date. But, you know, by and large, each platform will probably have an optimal posting frequency. You're looking to strike that nice balance between not overwhelming followers, but also not posting so little that you are forgotten. You know, so maybe on Facebook, for instance, 1 or 2 times a day, it's not a platform that moves particularly fast, whereas Twitter, or X as it is called now, that is a platform that moves incredibly fast. So if you're using that as one of your key channels, then you have the option to post more frequently. TikTok, you know, there are those that post 3 times a day. There are those accounts that post 3 times a week. There seems to be sort of no real sweet spot, but I think consistency is important, and also just sort of signing up to a schedule that you yourselves can keep to. LinkedIn, obviously a much slower platform. So, you know, with a much longer tail, content tends to do well for much longer on LinkedIn. So not a need to generate as quickly and publish. Yeah, but ultimately it all comes down to this idea of consistency. Next slide. So content themes and pillars. you know, there are core themes or topics that your brand focuses on, and ultimately they are the things that's going to guide content creation and ensure you're delivering consistent, valuable messaging. And then those themes relate to your pillars in the sense that you might, for example, create, you know, motivational Mondays for, you know, inspiration, or a lifestyle theme that might sort of link back to a, you know, educational content pillar. So basically it helps establish a predictable flow of content that your audience can come to expect and appreciate. Next slide. So why do you need content pillars? There's obviously this consistency. You know, it's aligning your brand values and goals in the digital space, as referenced last week. You know, it prevents that idea of fatigue in the sense that you're not always posting about the same thing. There is sort of a plethora menu of different content strands being released to keep people engaged and infused. And it also helps you build authority and trust, I guess. You know, if you're consistently publishing on the same ideas and finding new ways to sort of package those ideas, then you know, you build brand trust, brand loyalty, authority, and that will sort of help with, you know, other campaigns in the future. Next slide. So, you know, this is a little bit of revision from last week, but, you know, building your content themes and pillars, you know, it starts with identifying those key messages. I feel like a bit of a broken record, but, you know, that could be educational, could be entertainment, could be inspirational. It's probably a combination of all three. You know, it's going back to that idea of audience need. Research what your audience is looking for. You can do that through reviews. You can do that through sort of basic surveys. But what problems do they need solving? What's the content that resonates with them? You can do that in a multitude of ways. And then once you know those two things, then it's assigning, you know, a structure for your week around those key themes. For instance, you know, Monday could be about education, Wednesday could be more promotional activity, and Friday could be entertaining. That is a very sort of basic, crude, you know, overview, and you may not stick to that simpler structure, but ultimately it could be that simple. And then in terms of visualizing your pillars, well, you know, create that mind map of your brand's topics and organize them into broader themes that you can then plan your posts around. So it sort of will help that process of ideation and content generation. Next slide. So to repurpose or not, there's a massive debate about whether you should repurpose content. On one side of the argument, there are those that say if your content is good, it will be successful on most platforms. On the other side of the argument, there is the people that say that actually to really win on social, you need to be creating platform-specific content and not repurposing. And I think both have merits, and there's probably no clear sort of idea here, or no clear winning way forward. I think, you know, the virtues of repurposing is obviously there's a time-saving benefit. You're not having to start afresh each time. You have the ability to maximize on reach. So, you know, if you stick it across all your channels, you're going to have a much larger cumulative reach than you would if you only published one channel. So, for example, you know, a comprehensive blog post could be turned into a series of infographics or used as the basis of a script for a video, podcast episode. And these are all things that are driving, you know, people to the same sort of topic area. There's this idea that it keeps content fresh, that message being the same, but you're presenting it in different formats, giving it fresh perspective, makes it suitable for multiple platforms. Next slide. So, you know, at the RI, we do a lot of repurposed content. This is probably one of our most successful examples. This is about our moment of almost fame in Bridgerton, season 3, where, you know, Humphrey Davy's miner's lamp makes a appearance you know, it initially started as a thread on X, that, as you can see, got 3.8 thousand likes and in the region of 788,000 impressions on the top tweet alone. I think the whole thread garnered over 1 million impressions. And then on the right-hand side, you can see that I basically repurposed the thread word for word almost, but presented it in a slightly different fashion. So in here, it's a 14 slide photo carousel published to TikTok. Again, it's largely, it is the same story. And on TikTok, it got over 500,000 views, which was a surprise to me because it's not a video. It's just one of those photo sort of slideshows. But, you know, TikTok are moving or are moving towards sort of photos increasingly, so that might have played a part in it. But I think, you know, the point here is that actually here is an example where a good piece of content on one platform has performed very well on the on another platform. Yes, you could say that I've, you know, done a little bit of repurposing. Obviously, I presented it in a slightly different fashion, but the words stay the same. So I think, you know, there is value in sharing good content in different places. It sort of provides a good example of, you know, the power of a good story. But I think it would be naive to, you know, continually repurpose content as a strategy, because that might not be the most effective way. So I think, you know, when it comes to repurposing at the RI, it's about repurposing the content that's performed extremely well and using that sort of marker of success as an indication that it's probably a good piece of content that will perform with a few sort of stylistic tweaks as well in different areas. Next slide, please. So in summary, and I apologize that this has been a whistle-stop tour, you know, it's quality over quantity. If you're an organization that can only post on one platform twice a week, then do that and make those posts really good. Don't overstretch yourselves and publish 12 times a week with content that is quite forgettable. Again, and this comes sort of onto the next week, basically it needs to be led by analytics. And you can obviously see what the analytics are saying and adjust content accordingly. And then obviously all of this is somewhat, you know, in flux because social media is an ever-evolving landscape, so you have to be adaptable. And I think with any content calendar, there's only a certain limit of posts that you can schedule. So you can schedule all the pre-planned stuff, but reactive trend posts, you know, that's stuff that you can't publish. So, you know, being conscious and mindful of that. And if you are an organization that wants to publish that type of content, you know, leaving space within a calendar to enable you to sort of jump on those trends and be reactive to those viral moments is, you know, a thing that you probably should consider. And that is the end. So questions?
Stephen, sorry, my laptop's having a moment. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, well, who would like to comment or question for Stephen based on that little presentation? Anything anyone wants to flag up or share? And whether it's challenges, whether it's ideas, whether it's like Rosie. Hello.
Hello, sorry. So Stephen, you mentioned about URLs not doing as well. But obviously with a lot of promotional content we put out, we want people to follow the URLs so that they then go and buy a ticket to visit us. Is that just an example of text with URL? What we normally do is like a video with the URL on it, but is that then meaning that our video is not going to be viewed as much? Like I'm trying to weigh up the positives and negatives of including that call to action to take them off to the website or not?
Yeah, I think I think that's a good strategy to sort of counter that down ranking of URLs. I do think that URLs ultimately are, really quite heavily down ranked, and there's sort of no real way around that, unless anybody else in this chat has any thoughts to the contrary.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think as a member of the public, when there isn't a URL, you do kind of go off to the profile and find the link to the website, and if it's affecting your algorithms, I'd say test it, do a week of no URLs and see. I don't know what you think about testing, Stephen, and A/B testing, and suck it and see, but choose a quiet time to test it, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think in terms of, I agree, A/B testing, obviously any sort of decision you make needs to be sort of analytics led. In terms of our approach at the RI, we obviously publish quite a few, well, every day we're publishing promo things to our events. We did run an A/B test about engagement, and we found that if we created a bespoke link card for the event, so it displayed differently from your normal sort of URL preview page, that had higher engagement rates. So that was one way that we found that we could somewhat counter that, which had two benefits. It increased the number of link clicks, but it also helped our overall engagement rate on the channel, because we publish a lot of events promo content. I think that is sort of a events, you're going to need to publish your events, and that's going to need to include a URL. I think where it might be different is if you have a blog, for instance, you could think about sort of creating content where you're basically repurposing that blog and using it as an on-platform piece of content rather than pointing people away. So I think it's what you're using the URL for.
And would you say it's like the same for like Facebook ads, that if you create a Facebook ad, you've put money behind it, and your link is sending them to go and buy the ticket on our website, do you reckon that has the same effect then?
No, I think paid advertising operates slightly differently to an organic post. So I think you're okay there. But I also think that if you have the capacity, exploring sort of in-app ticket purchases, you could see benefit there. But again, that's a capacity, resource, and A/B testing jobby again.
Thanks, Rosie. And there's some good chat going on in the chat about Instagram as well. And obviously you can't put links on Instagram, but I think probably everyone is aware of that. I guess that's Linktree, the answer to that. George.
Hiya. So I did see another account doing, I can't remember how or who it was, but on Instagram, obviously one of the things I think Derek raised in the chat is that they don't want you to leave the platform, so it's quite difficult to encourage people off it. But for example, one of the things we do a lot on our website to get people there is like have a kind of active blog. So what you can do is kind of like take almost like the first line snap of what's in the blog and leave like a ... because like having that sort of like, oh, what's this about, but I want to find out more, is one way we, rather than kind of putting loads of information and a whole summary of like start to end, just having like the first line or like the first kind of bit of information and then leaving them wanting more, is one way that you can get people to kind of leave or at least want to find out more and trick them into going onto your website.
Yeah. I think what this conversation really comes down to is where your organization wants to see its engagement. If your organization is, ticket sales aside, or event sales aside, if your organization wants to see its prime engagement on its own channels, i.e. its website, then your challenge is pointing people to that. But if your organization is happy for your prime engagement to be off platform, so on your social channels, which you don't own, and they value that, then I reckon you could probably really outstrip, sort of views.
Yeah, there's so much to think about, isn't there? So much. Has anyone else got any more questions? I'm conscious of time. We just need to share. Stephen's going to share a template, scheduling template. I don't know whether that's helpful. You kind of probably all got your planning and your scheduling sorted, but would it be helpful to, well, we can put it in the Teams channel as a downloadable template if that is helpful. But
Yeah, I just wanted to say as well, because Joanne's asked in the chat about which social media management platforms people use. So if anyone has any that they really adore, feel free to share.
I mean, we use Sprout, as I said, and I really like it. And also Sprout is relatively cheap if you're a charity. So I think for the year, we are on a fairly basic plan, but it comes in at about £1,300 for the year, which sounds like a lot as an outlay, but divided over 12 months is not horrendous.
okay, shall we quickly run through would anyone like the template? Well, we can, yeah, as I said, we'll put it in the Teams chat. Let's not look at that on screen
Cool.
now, but
Yeah, that's fine.
I think just to recap on, it sounds really kind of schooly saying there's homework, but I know when I've done workshops, it's kind of good to have a bit of a thing that you've got to do between now and next week, just to kind of keep things going and moving. But if you would like to, and certainly Stephen would maybe look over it, but a plan of content that you might draft, having thought about everything that's been said today, whether it's content pillars, whether it's more aligning with audiences, or whether it's to do with just focusing on one channel, can you put together a draft program of posts for the next month, and we can sort of review it. We could use it as a demo in the next session and talk it through. Stephen, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, no, like that's the task that we thought would be beneficial and most linked to this this sort of session. But equally, I would say that if you already have some form of content calendar session, and your time is best served sort of asking questions and sharing experiences in the chat, then that is as valuable, if not more. So yeah.
Good point. Would anyone like to add anything? We've got just a couple of minutes left. Is this all helpful? Are we all learning? Because obviously Stephen is very good at his presentations, but one thing he has said to me is, I don't want to teach people to suck eggs, and we don't want to do that. Becky?
Yeah, so I've just had a live problem come in, so I thought I'd share it. So our staff are today, our work is amazing, so they're speaking at a conference, but the posts that's come in, I'm like, I understand what Stephen's saying and all these, like I know how to do that, but I don't understand how to get there. We're at a conference today speaking about like how that fits in or feeds in or is of interest to the audience. So I just wondered, how are other people doing that kind of credibility building posts, but that is still interesting in the social media world that we're in right now, where it feels like it jars. And it's just come in, they've just asked me to post it, and I'm like, oh,
do I want to? Yeah, no.
Well, I have to, it's my job, but
yeah,
how do I make it fit and feel cohesive with everything else?
I mean, I think that's something that I, can struggle with on a daily. I'm sure people in the chat also have views on this. For me, I'm acutely aware that actually there is value in sharing that type of thing for a, funders, a sort of brand reputation, sort of, we are engaged in this type of. So for me, that content sits more as a LinkedIn post, potentially as a Twitter post. And then I think, you know, what we're looking to do is we're looking to tell a story, and you know, through repetition of that type of content, you know, you're raising brand profile through either the person that's there consistently doing it, you know, or it's raising brand profile through the sort of conversations and activities that you guys are engaged with. Yeah, but for me, it would be all about, you know, is it a video at a day with us at X conference? Would that perform better than, you know, a piece of text and a dodgy iPhone photo? Maybe.
Yeah, they will watch this back because they're all on this course. But yeah, I hear you. I hear you.
And I think one of the issues is, and people might have their views on this, I think for organizations like us, you know, we see celebrities and people with following go to really boring daily events and, you know, capture it in a way that feels authentic and interesting. But actually, what's the interesting part, I think, in my view, is that it's because we know that person and we're getting a view of their life. And I think the struggle for us is that actually nobody really knows, or dare I say cares, about what Joe Bloggs from X organization is up to. So it's sort of, you know, the challenge is making that interesting or doing it enough where there is that sort of repetition, familiarity of voice and person.
Yeah,
And-
so would somebody care, essentially?
Yeah.
Really on that.
Ellie, did you want to come in on this? Just kind of 1 more minute left.
Yeah, I wanted to say that when we've done things in the past, I think Cora's also said this in the chat, we found that Instagram stories and just on stories in general is a really good way to do conference posts, because it sort of lets people see the journey through the day and it gives people an insight into what the people are doing. So me and Ishmael were actually at a conference today, so we'll be doing like an Instagram takeover and we'll be sharing the things we see, the people we're talking to, and we found that we get quite good engagement through those posts.
Great. Thank you. Right, we've just literally come to the end of the hour. So thank you. Thank you, Stephen. Obviously, massive thank you. Thank you everyone being here today and taking the time to come and get your head in the zone. As I said, if you want to take up the challenge of the little homework task, we can look at that over the week. As Stephen said, also really valuable to just crack on and put things into practice. Look forward to seeing you on the Teams channel and next week. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks
Thank you
all.
very much.
Thank you.